Hello, everyone. It's Sunday once again, and this is my favorite day of the week now because it's like I do love talking to drummers, and it's Ask the Drummer Day today, every Sunday. So I'm really happy when it's Sunday. I was just so like for me, it's so exciting, such an exciting day. And this week, we've actually got someone who's so incredible. I mean, I haven't seen him sort of like perform live or anything, but um, in the Philippines, one of their songs is actually like a massive favorite amongst the Filipino new wavers. So I thought maybe this week I'm gonna borrow my friend's podcast name, and I'm gonna call this one "It's All About New Wave" episode, because our guest this week for us. I know might be a bit like different for hardcore fans of this band, but for us, we really think that they're like the definitive new wave band. So, well, let's welcome a guest live from the south of Spain, I believe. So, please welcome Michael Dudley. Yay!
Hello. Hey.
Hello, Mike. I should say hola, hola.
Hola, hola, ¿qué tal? Sí, sí.
¿Cómo estás? Or in
Sí, buen, mucho buen. Bien,
or in the Philippines, we say "kumusta," which is
Okay.
more or less, yeah, similar.
Yeah,
'Cause,
yeah.
I don't know if you know it, but the Philippines so like under the Spanish so like rule for over 300 years.
Yeah,
So yeah, so a lot of our words are actually so like from the Spanish, so Spanish language. So yeah,
okay.
it's Mike. I won't call you Michael, so it's Mike.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, my neighbours call me Mr. Michael, so
Mr. Michael.
yeah.
So how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Still surviving. Yeah.
Still surviving. And so you're in Spain, and what's the weather like? Is it cold? Or...
Yeah, yes, I'm English. We do like to talk about the weather quite a lot. This is true. Well, it's still we're having a very warm October. It's been a bit rainy recently, but I haven't yet put the central heating on, so that's fine. Over here, winter doesn't really, in the English sense, doesn't really start till January. Then it's very short. So
Yeah. And is that the reason why you moved?
yeah, one of them. Yes, one of the why. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long have you been living in is it Sharon, Nevada? Is that Sharon, Nevada?
Sierra Nevada, yeah, up in the mountains. I moved out here in 2017 when I retired from work. I was lucky enough to take advantage of the housing situation and sell a really a sort of a grubby little flat for a great deal of money and bought a small property out here.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And are you working there or?
No, I'm retired. I don't work anymore. Too old to work.
Well, before we actually sort of like do all the interviewing, I just want to sort of like dedicate this episode to a good friend of mine, Monty Mendigoria. Because thanks, Monty, for the link up. Because it was him who told me about you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because you guessed it on his podcast. It's all about new wave. I mean,
that's right.
I was meant to sort of like I was gonna watch the episode, but look it up. But I think it was like a few months ago now. Wasn't it sort of
Yeah,
like a few months
yeah, it was
ago?
last year, I think, wasn't it?
Last year?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so and I got so like gigs to go to and stuff. So I thought, well, maybe it's for the best that I didn't see it. So I'm not so like asking you the same questions as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So right. So anyways, welcome to Ask the Drummer. Episode 55 is all about you, Michael Dudley. So so it's all like I asked you earlier before we came on live, where were you born? And you're Cockney, you said.
Yes, mate.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Because I remember when I went to to visit London. It was like years ago, before I moved to the UK. I went on this tour bus thing,
Mm.
and the guide said that people say they're from London, but the real Londoners, like what you told me, it's got to be within. You were born. You've got to be born within the so like Bow Bells sound,
That's
something
it. The
like that.
sound of bow bells. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you
Mm.
were born sort of like there.
Indeed, I was. Yes. Although I was born there, but the family moved out of that area fairly quickly and rapidly became very posh and middle class. Mm.
And
That's why.
yeah, go ahead.
That's that. Yeah, yeah. That's why I don't talk like this. I talk like this. See, I have this sort of accent thing.
But do you do the sort of like Cockney rhyming slang?
Oh,
Do
apples
you
and pears. Apple stairs, apples and pears. Yeah, all that. Yeah,
in like China plate for mate or something? Is
yeah,
that
yeah. Kettle and hob for watch,
oh
and yeah, you refer to money with terms like, "Oh, that'll cost you a monkey or a pony at least." You know, just like
wow. So really it's only Londoners will actually understand what you're
yeah,
talking about when you
yeah.
talk
No, with
amongst
what?
yourselves.
Yeah, or rhyming slang developed originally as a way of people talking to each other without alerting the authorities as to what they were doing.
Oh.
Back in the
Oh
days when, back in the days when in the East End was has always been relatively poverty stricken, and back in the days when people used to make money by nefarious means,
yeah.
they would communicate to each other with rhyming slang. So the authorities, who were inevitably not of the same culture, wouldn't know what they were talking about. That's how it developed.
Oh wow.
Mm.
I didn't know that.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah, we
see.
do. We do learn something new every day. I've got to say
Yes,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're joined by Trevor Palmer, who's in Skipton. He said, "Hello, Mike." So,
Oh, hello,
Trevor.
Trevor. Hello.
Yeah. So, what was it? What was like? So you moved out of London and to Essex.
Yeah, that's
So,
right. When I was just not long after I was born. Yeah.
so when you were growing up, what was Essex like? Was this all like in
Well,
the
what was Essex like? Well, when I was growing up, it was like the 1950s and early 60s, and it was much like everywhere else in England, which was to say, it was miserable and cold and wet, and there was nothing to do at the weekend. I mean, you had to make your own amusement. That is, go out into the street with your friends and kick each other a lot, and then go home for tea.
I was about to sort of like say, did you go to quite a lot of like clubs, or was it like what was the music scene like? You were just kicking each other.
No, I mean, I mean, when I was growing up, we're talking about. I was born in 1951, so for the first 10 years of life, it was mainly going to school, going home for your tea, and being bored. I mean, don't forget, we barely had television, let alone the internet or anything. So,
Yeah,
and it was like, and it was so, it was very, very, it was a very conservative sort of society. Uh, and there was nothing to do really. I mean, I remember I went to my first club gig in 1968. That'd be when I was about 17 years old. And from the late 60s, that's when things started sort of opening up a bit, and people were less kind of suffering the aftermath of the war years, which is what I think it used to be responsible for. Because at that point in time, Great Britain was financially, emotionally, and economically drained from the Second World War. That's why there was nothing to do. I mean, I've still got a ration card that was issued to me when I was born, because at that time the country was still on wartime rations, even though the war had been over for 6 years. So you can imagine that it was a pretty grey sort of place to grow up in. But, yeah.
yeah. Oh wow. So you kept that ration card, and
Yeah,
so
I've still got it. It's in the cupboard. Yeah. Yeah.
that's probably so like worth like loads of money now. When people, if you want to sell, like people are probably, so,
Hmm.
all these people.
I don't know. It's just a bit of pasteboard with my name on it. Really.
Well, people are really into sort of like memorabilia or so, or
Yeah.
maybe donate it to a museum or something, and because
Perhaps. Yeah.
that's fascinating or so, like So, were you from a musical family?
Well, was I from? My father played a bit of piano and mandolin. He brought a mandolin home from Italy where he was posted during the war years, and I used to pick at that a bit. But not really, not really. I sort of my interest in drawing. Well, I tried to play the bass guitar as an alternative to the guitar, because I thought it would be easier. Only got
Yeah,
four strings, but I found that too difficult, so I bought a drum kit.
a trumpet. Oh,
And that
what?
was really, yeah, but that was really my route out of a home life which was, let's call it, dysfunctional. I wasn't happy there as a child, and I left when I was about 19 with my drums, and that was my escape route, I suppose, really. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, before I ask you about your drums, Trevor said that you might need your Russian card again soon.
Yeah.
So, and also, I want to say hello to Tom. I'm not going to pronounce his name now again, but he said hello, so he's joined us
Okay.
because he's got a different, so like difficult to pronounce name. But hello,
All right.
Tom.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you left with your drum kit, but what got you into drums? You said that you bought trumpet before, so did you not
Mm.
enjoy playing trumpet, and then you moved into sort of like
Well,
drums?
I started drumming when I was very young. I was in the what I call the Air Cadets. There's like a little organisation for youngsters who want to go gliding and thinking about joining the RAF and whatnot. And I was in a marching band playing the snare drum, which is the guys at the front with the sticks playing all the rat-a-tat-tat stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and I think that's really what inclined me towards expanding that out into a drum kit, because I mean, although my time there didn't last very long, because 1968 had come around and I was, listening to rock music and growing my hair. So I
yeah,
did that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned snare drums because when I was in so like primary school or elementary school in the Philippines, I joined the Girl Scouts, the Girl
Oh,
Guides.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was so interested in drums. I had this snare drums, but it's not what I was so like imagining it would be because it's like hanging around your neck and you have to go like this. And I thought it was
Yeah,
so uncool. I was like,
yeah,
I didn't want to do this. So that was the sort of like snare drum you had. So you had it so like
that's right. Yeah,
hanging. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And
Which, of course, you used to have to play using the traditional unmatched grip, because the skin being on its side, you held the left hand stick across the palm instead of crosswise across the palm, instead of holding it so that they're both pointing out in the same direction.
yeah,
And I started off trying to play like that. I started off playing a drum kit or learning how to play a drum kit by putting on Rolling Stones records and trying to play along with Charlie Watts, which wasn't difficult, really, to be honest, because he's fairly basic sort of technique. But it wasn't long before I changed to matched grip, because it's much easier to get around the kit like that.
Did you have any lessons? Did you go for any sort of like drumming lessons, or
Oh,
you
well,
just self-taught?
there's a story. I've only ever had one drum lesson, and although we're sort of jumping forward a bit here in time, which was when I joined what was then the Outsiders, which later became the Sound,
Yeah.
was because their manager at the time I sort of knew socially, and their drummer Jan was leaving to go to university, and they needed a replacement. So their management suggested me, and I'd been sort of looking around. I mean, by that time, when 1977 came around, I'd spent, don't forget, like, I'm 8 years older than the nearest oldest member of the band, which would be Adrian. So I was a completely different generation to all these young guys, right? But I'd been looking around for something to do, and punk came along, and I got very interested in this and thought, well, I need to jump in on some of this, because up until that point, I hadn't really done anything collectively with anybody else apart from just sort of sitting around jamming, you know. And I had a little band of my own, a trio going at the time.
Yeah.
And their manager came along to one of our gigs and sort of sought me there. And so we got to talking. And I said, okay, well, let's get together and we'll have an audition. So we all got together in a back room and a squat where I was living at the time. And Jan, the drummer who was leaving, turned up, and a couple of other people, and it was a really small room. So I was sitting there in the corner with the drum kit, and they was sitting behind me, crouched in the corner. And I said, okay, lads. So Graham and Adrian were there, but Benita wasn't there at that point. And I said, okay, what are we going to do then? And Adrian says, let's do a song by Iggy Pop.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Well, I didn't have a clue at the time who Iggy Pop was. I'd never heard of him. You know, so I said, oh, who's Iggy Pop? And they said, look, well, we'll just do the song. We play it. So we did a version of TVI.
Yeah.
Started playing it, and I sort of played along to it. Well, I thought it was quite good. And then there's no, stop. But I said, what's the problem? He said, you're being too complicated. And I thought, really? It's complicated. Okay, try again, and I'll simplify it. So we had another go. And again, it was stopped. Now you're still playing to, and I said, well, I don't really know what you want me to do. And at that point, Jan, who was sitting behind me, said, all right, get off the kit and I'll show you what to do. And then he just basically sort of, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hit everything all at the same time, 4 to the bar. Okay, well, I can do that. Okay, so I sat down and we played TVI, and then they said, well, that was quite good. Do you want to join the band? You know, so. And that is the only drum lesson I've ever had, which was Jan teaching me how to play TVI. Right.
I see. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's how we said.
Yeah, the rest is completely self-taught. I mean.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's incredible. Before we continue, just want to say hello to A. Ruiz. He's watching from Singapore. Hello, A. It's so nice that you agreed to join us. So, that is really fascinating. So you're obviously a founding member of the Sound, but before that, Adrian Borland was already, like you mentioned, he was already in another band, and you went for an audition to join them. But so it's called The Outsiders. I mean, were they kind of popular in London, or because I'm not really sure, to be honest.
No, I didn't know much about them really, but I've learned later on that they'd been gigging, and they'd released really was could quite easily be called the first punk album, long before the Damned released their first album with New Rose on it. They released an album called Calling on Youth. And it was completely self-financed, recorded and distributed. So they were really hot off the marks with that one. And they'd done a few gigs in London. In fact, I understand that at one gig at the Roxy Club, I think it was.
Yeah.
And there's a picture floating around on the internet of this happening. Adrian said that he, just for a joke, he put on the guest list David Bowie and Iggy Pop. And they were playing. They started playing Raw Power on stage. Just the three of them. It was Adrian, a guy called Bob Lawrence on bass, and Jan on drums. Yeah. They started playing Raw Power, and lo and behold, who jumps up onto the stage but Iggy bloody Pop, and starts singing along with his own song. You know, so
my God.
Yeah. So they weren't incredibly popular as such, but there was a history there. Something was happening. You know. But I think they got to the point, well, as I say, the drummer was leaving, and they sort of thought, well, we need to progress a bit on the sort of music we're making here. They've done a couple of albums, And
Yeah, yeah.
so we went from there. Yeah.
But did you already know of them? Did you already know
No,
of Adrian
not at all.
Borland?
I wasn't aware at all. They were just, as I say, my mate Jeff said, "Oh, I'm managing this band. Are you interested?" You know. So, in actual
Yeah,
fact, I sort of said, and they said, "Well, come along and see them play." And I went along with a couple of friends of mine to a club called the 101 Club in Clapham Junction
yeah,
near the
yeah.
station, and watched the Outsiders, and I thought they were horrible. Just no, really. You were. I said, no, I can't be bothered. This is terrible. I can't. I'm not interested. And but my friends who were with me said, well, look, just have a go. You know what? You're not doing anything important, really. And the band I was in really wasn't going anywhere. We had like a circuit of South London pubs that we were playing, but it had stalled. Really, nothing was out. So I said, okay, I'll give it a go. And then we had the session that I was telling you about in the back room there. So that's how that
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
so,
But
so
they were rubbish, I don't know.
so obviously this is not your first band. So what was going back now? So what was that first band like? Were you?
It's myself and a friend of mine who played the bass guitar. I brought along guitar. I mean, we thought we were going to be like the New Police or something, but we were just kidding us. Really. I mean, we wrote our own material, but it wasn't very good, to be honest.
Oh,
As I say, we knocked about doing pub gigs for a year or so,
yeah,
and then the Outsiders thing happened. But before that, I hadn't really been in a band as such. It was just sort of jamming with people and you
yeah,
know
yeah,
trying to learn how to play better over the years since then. So
yeah.
yeah,
So when you mentioned that you're like a few years older than the rest of them, and I
yeah,
know if it, I know the gap, say 6, 7 years or something, is not that much. But if you're someone like
well,
18, 19, or 20, and
yeah.
there's someone who's, so what was their reaction to you when they saw you? Did they say, "Oh, he's too old for us" or something? Did they say that or?
No, it never arose as a subject for discussion. I never felt as though I was being treated like a pensioner or something, because we were all just too busy concentrating on the music,
Yeah, yeah,
and trying to keep up with what was happening to us. Going in to a recording studio and then meeting a record company and getting the deal. It all happened so fast that there was no time to sort of consider any of that stuff. I think about it really in retrospect now, with regard to when I think about the sort of the kind of the subtext of how we were sort of getting along with each other. I can think of now. Yeah, it wasn't really. It did feel as though that I felt that gap. There wasn't really any kind of uh, cultural crossover.
oh,
So
yeah,
things that I would talk about are things that I'd experienced in life before they left school. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't really understand. So there was a distance there, really. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
in terms of communication generally between me and the rest of the guys in the band. But as I say, other than that, we all seemed to get on well together, and we did what we did. So.
yeah, yeah. But being so like the oldest, did you feel like you're the one in charge, that maybe you had to look after them or something? No, not
No, no,
really.
no, no, no. We all followed Adrian.
Oh,
Adrian's
right.
the guy. He was the guy. Wrote the
Yeah,
songs, did the singing, fronted up the band, did the interviews and all the rest of it. I mean, it could quite easily have been, Adrian Borland and the sound. Like, it was Elvis Costello and the
yeah,
Attraction.
and
That
yeah,
that was the
yeah.
situation. Yeah, yeah.
But, well, I've got a really nice message here from Tom. He said that the sound should have received more acclaim. Absolute inspired my music tastes in the 80s. The LPs Jeopardy and From the Lion's Mouth are awesome. Yeah, that's really good. But I have to say that whenever I think of the sound, like the band, it's kind of, I think it's because of Adrian Bolin that it always makes me sad, because knowing what happened to him, and again in the Philippines, there's that particular song that's very, very popular. And it's not from those two albums that Tom just mentioned. It's actually from a different album. And
Yeah.
apparently, I've done like some research on the albums and stuff. Apparently, this the Total Recall's song, which is in Heads and Hearts. Um, apparently that's like one of your weakest, or that was the weakest album that you've ever released. Is that true, or
Well, sort of, I suppose, in a way. I mean, there's one or two numbers on there that I'm not completely happy with. But I mean, there's stuff on it that I think we really stretched ourselves on, like bringing in Ian on saxophone from a band called Fiat Lux, who did a tour with us.
yeah, yeah,
He came in on saxophone on a couple of numbers, which many people I've heard have criticised because I think it's too jazzy, you know. But I mean, that's fine by me because I quite like jazz. But what can I tell you? I have heard it said that's sort of the least regarded album out of all of our product. But I
yeah,
like them all, really. You know, I think they're all pretty good myself. I
yeah,
know Lion's Mouth gets picked out as being the best because it's got a very polished production and
yeah,
all that. But in terms of the actual material and the songs, apart from a couple on Heads and Hearts that I don't really like, I defend it all.
yeah. That's actually the album that I've got, which is this one
Oh
here. I
yeah,
don't know if you can see
yeah,
it. Yeah, but it's that one. It's the reason for that is, like I said, Total Recall is like absolutely amazing. I mean, if you ask a Filipino new waver, I'm sure A Ruiz would like agree with me that that song is, if you're a Filipino new waver, that will be in your top five or top
yeah. Oh,
three.
okay.
So like new wave songs,
Mhm.
which is just absolutely amazing. Um, a few years ago, I actually went to see a film about Adrian Borland. That's in Manchester. It's called Walking in the Opposite
That's the
Direction.
direction. Yeah.
Um, because I mean, I've got to be honest that apart from Total Recall, I didn't really know much about him, nor the sound, music,
Okay.
stuff. So when I went to see it, it was just, I've got to tell you that there's not a dry eye now. It's like
Yeah.
everyone was really,
Yeah.
moved and
I mean,
by it.
I went to the premiere of that movie in Amsterdam back
Yeah,
in 2017, I think it was, and saw it a few times. It took me 3 or 4 goes before I can actually sit there and watch it all the way through without actually having to leave the room, because it's quite a difficult subject. And what makes it even more difficult that I was actually personally involved in a lot of it. So it's tragic, but
yeah,
it happens. What can you do? I mean, when you find it's the sort of thing you might read about happening, but when you find yourself actually involved in one of these situations, it's like, because when Adrian's illness started to develop during the sound.
yeah,
So especially towards the end, nobody really knows how to deal with it, because I mean, we're musicians, we're not psychiatrists. Nobody really knows what's going on. We thought he was just being an idiot, and then it turns out that actually, oh well, actually he tried to commit suicide. Oh,
yeah,
okay, and then of course eventually he did. But it was very difficult towards the end, very difficult indeed. Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of so like for me personally, because it happened in 1999, and I was already living in the UK in Manchester in 1996. So I was here when that happened, but I mean, I can't remember like seeing it in the news or something, or maybe it was in the news that, but we just forgotten about it. But it's almost like it wasn't that long ago. I mean, if you think about Ian Curtis of Joy Division, and it was 1980, and then at the time, I'm sure people didn't really talk about mental health, and it's it's like, especially amongst men or amongst young boys or things, you don't talk about things like that. But then,
No.
yeah, but with Adrian Borland, think knowing that it's already 1999, I thought people would have maybe helped him, and so
Well, yeah. I mean, I mean, his parents were always right there supporting him right to the end.
yeah,
Uh, and a few of his friends, as I understand it, were. But I mean, he even when he was in. I mean, you've seen the movie, so
yeah. It
the
was just
section the
really,
section where they're talking about the band that he had in Holland towards the end there, and he was actually sectioned off in Holland, and they would come and winkle him out of his sort of treatment to go and record an album because, as far as they were concerned, it's in the contract and we've got to do it, which was something that
yeah,
I really
yeah,
didn't wasn't very happy with. And also, I've spoken to some professionals since who said that at that time there was very little available medically to help someone in that position. It was a case of either you take the drug and you're a zombie, or you don't take the drug and you're hyperactive and in danger of killing yourself. Uh, Apparently, these days, these sort of medications can be sort of individually tailored to a person's particular needs. And had it been nowadays instead of then, he would have been perfectly able to, carry on
yeah,
and function
yeah,
perfectly well. He was just, as he says in one of his songs, he was a victim of circumstance,
yeah.
as are we
Well,
all.
there's one particular line there that I really, because it's like when he said something like, "If you want to understand me, Dad, read my lyrics."
My lyrics,
I
yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah, I just thought, oh God, it's like,
But you,
yeah,
yeah, but you can only do that. You can only read his lyrics in the light of what has happened. I mean, a lot of his lyrics were. I mean, at the time, I just thought the rest was thought, oh well, he's just being fashionably dark because he likes Joy Division, so he decided to write like that sort of thing. It was only after the fact that people suddenly realised, well, actually, he is actually singing about himself and his own state of mind. So,
yeah. And the thing with lyrics is, it's like you can interpret it so like differently. It's like when you listen to a song, it depends on, like, if you're a music fan, it depends on sort of like what kind of mood you're in as well.
yeah,
Sometimes that you sort of like
yeah,
interpret different lyrics, so like, oh, it's not
yeah,
about this, it's something
yeah,
else. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so it's a bit so like difficult. But well, talking about the sound in your label, Korova, that's another one. So like Korova is actually really, because now that I started collecting records, I've noticed all these labels, and Korova is like with Echo and the Bunnyman and Strawberry Switchblade. I think is like on Korova as well, and Psychedelic Furs. Now,
Yeah.
last night I went to see Ian McCulloch in Nantwich.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, he's absolutely.
He's great. He's a great friend of mine.
Oh, he's absolutely amazing. But I was sort of like thinking when, especially when I saw him singing there, and knowing that I'll be interviewing you the following day, I can't help
Mm.
but think, what if Adrian Borland got the help that like he needed, and he'd probably be doing the same thing as Ian McCulloch right now, is like doing this words and music festival in
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, that's
yeah,
probably, yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But well, no, as I say, with the medical help that would have sorted the problem in the long term wasn't available at that time. So,
yeah.
no,
It's a
yeah,
shame, really. But, so Tom said that the singles winning and missiles are massive. So, yeah. So,
okay.
and A. Ruiz said that he agrees with me that Total Recall is an amazing song and it's always on his playlist. Um, right. So when this is so like, I don't know if you think this is a good question, but when he left this planet. Because we can say that it's basically more or less similar to what happened to Joy Division.
Yeah.
Did the rest of the band sort of like even think that, oh, why don't we carry on? Maybe
Well,
one of us will sing, get another band member.
oh well, yeah. You see, Adrian committed suicide in 1999, but the Sound split up in 1988.
Yeah, because he was doing some solo things at this. Yeah,
Adrian had a
so
solo career after the Sound split up. He also did a lot of collaborative work with our frontman in Into the Sound, Carlo Van Putten, who was also in the movie.
yeah,
And so, I mean, the reason the Sound split up was because I left. Because we got to the point where we did our last gig together on a Dutch tour, or the Dutch leg of the tour, which we'd gone back to after taking Adrian home mid-tour from Spain earlier because he'd broken down. And the last gig we played together was in a town called Zoetermeer in Holland, in a club called the Boerderij. That's a Dutch word. I don't know what it means in English. But we were going quite well. Halfway through the gig, halfway through a song, Adrian just unplugged and walked off the stage. And so the rest of the band are like, oh, where's he going? What can you do? So we just sort of petered out and stopped, and we all walked off the stage and went back to the dressing room where Adrian was had become like Adrian had disappeared, and there was just this body that looked like Adrian sitting there in a state of shock. And I think Max took him home that time, and we had a meeting afterwards, some couple of months down the line, and I had made up my mind to say that it'd just be stupid to carry on because obviously he can't cope, and there's no point. Well, we did actually. Me and the other two guys did say to each other, well, why don't we'll tell Adrian to give it a rest, go away and get some rest, get what help you need. We'll carry on. We'll find something else to do in the meantime, and then give it some time, and then we'll get back together again. But during the meeting, that sort of disappeared, and it was they were acting as if nothing had been said. And so at that point, I thought, well, I can't really do this anymore, and just said, well, I'm leaving, guys, and that was that. And I'm told that they did have a go at trying to find someone to replace me, but it didn't really work out. So the band fell to pieces at that point. Yeah.
And that happened in Amsterdam because I just saw I just remembered something that, the Stone Roses. I think it was in Amsterdam when it was the drummer. It was Rennie who walked out. It wasn't the singer who walked out. It was the drummer. So I don't know if the Stone Roses.
Oh yeah.
I think that was in 2012, I think. But, when you mentioned Amsterdam, I'm sort of like thinking, oh, what is it about Amsterdam? It's all like musicians just walking out.
The thing about it was that our second to last gig was at the Paradiso in Amsterdam, and it was fantastic. I mean, we were all really happy with it. I mean, it's just the crowd response was amazing. We played really well. I think 3 of the songs that were taped on that concert are on the live album that's recently been released on the Sound called Will and Testament through the company that did the documentary. And it was amazing. And we went on to the next gig at Zoetermeer really full of beans. And this is great. We're back where we should be. And then it all sort of fell to pieces. So that was even more of a shock for the rest of us, really.
Yeah.
Are
you were you part of this one? This is from the Beautiful Music in Canada. And I think it also in support of walking in the opposite direction. It's like There Must Be a Hole in Your Memory compilation.
Yeah, hold it up let's have a look.
Oh, sorry.
Hold it up.
Yeah. It's a tribute to the Sound and Adrian Borland. And it's got a version of Total Recall, but nothing can actually, I mean, I like it, but you can't really copy or have that kind of
Well,
amazing.
I quite there's yeah. I mean, people's different. I like listening to some different versions of our songs. I don't really like
Yeah,
listening to the ones where people are trying to copy what we did because it never works really. But there was an album that came out on a label called Dune Altar in California, which was done for a charity out there, of local bands all doing radically different versions of sound songs. And I listen to it quite a lot. It's really I like to hear people's different ideas about how the songs should sound, the instrumentation, the way it's delivered, and so on. That I quite like that, you know.
yeah.
As I say, people who just sort of try and recreate what we did, but I can't, apart from anything else, I can't really see the point, to be honest. You know.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That was so. Um, you have become like the sound official spokesperson because Adrian's gone now, and
Yeah. Well, it's true. I do get asked a lot about
yeah,
it. You know, there's been Mandy and yourself over in Indonesia, and I get sort of interviews printed here and there in publications who ask me all about sound. Yeah, it's true. I suppose unofficially, I suppose I might be regarded as the spokesman because I'm the one that's got a lot to say about it. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm really glad that you're still sort of like doing that and keeping the sort of like the memory of the sound alive. And I'm really grateful to you for you know, for keeping it there. But we've got sort of like oh, sorry, I was gonna say when you mentioned Ian Nelson from Fiat Lux, I mean that's
Yeah.
another band that's actually became really popular in the Philippines as well with the
Oh,
song
yeah.
Secrets, you know, with Secrets. Because,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I actually went to see the two remaining members of the band
Right.
because they're still touring. I think they
Oh,
just
they're
did.
still going. Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah,
good luck to them. Yeah.
well, before lockdown,
Yeah.
they were the second to the last band that I saw. They
Ah.
were supporting China Crisis in
Oh,
Leeds.
yeah. Uh-huh.
They were really good. It's so good. They're still amazing. Um, so this I think was it your last album? Was it the last album that you went to Rockfield Studios and the famous Rockfield Studios in North Wales?
That was the second album, Lion's Mouth, we did at Rockfield.
Oh, is that the second one?
Yeah, in 1981, with Hugh Jones producing, because he'd just done Heaven Up Here with the Bunnymen. And the record label thought, well, now it's time to try and sort of, you know, get the sound up to the next level. So, because I mean, Jeopardy was an entirely self-produced album. It was just us in a little sort of 8-track recording studio in a warehouse in East London with Nick, the engineer.
Yeah,
But for the next, and I think it still sounds amazing given the circumstances. But they obviously thought, well, let's give them the Bunnymen treatment. So we got Hugh Jones, who was definitely he was in charge. There's very little feedback from the band apart from some percussive ideas of my own, and you know, Graham might want to do this bass line, or Max might want to play that keyboard riff. But mostly it was Hugh Jones directing things. And this is how it's going to sound like a Hugh Jones album. And he even used a couple of sort of sound effects tricks that you can also hear on Heaven Up Here. It's a very well produced, smoothly produced, and hi-fi quality sounding album.
yeah,
But what it lacks for me is it lacks the sort of the intensity of Jeopardy. Seems to. I mean, in that process of trying to make everything sound professional, it kind of loses the fire somehow.
yeah. But you know that recording studio in in the West. I don't know if you've seen the documentary about it,
I
but
have, yeah. I have seen it, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
were you not so like asked to so like contribute to that?
Well, I mean, we turned up at this. I mean, our experience of recording up until that point had been like sort of city studios and the like. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, you're going to go out and spend a week in the country. Okay. You know, and it's all like, I mean, with that, we were asked when we got there, did we want to enter into the traditional Rockfield band versus staff football competition?
Oh,
Did we want to go out riding horses in the? And we're all going like, no, we're the sound. We're here to record a fucking album. What's all this crap? It was all a bit too sort of kind of felt a bit like sort of hangover from the last days of the hippie era or something, you know.
yeah,
Getting it together in the country like Traffic used to do back in the old days, you know, all that stuff. But no, it wasn't. It wasn't really a very enjoyable experience. You felt a bit like chess pieces being moved around in someone else's game, you know. To be honest.
So it wasn't that enjoyable. I mean, it's like I think for
No,
many bands they aspire to go to that recording
no,
studio.
no, no, not really. I mean, it's like I mean, I'm quite a country boy. I like being in the outdoors, away from buildings, and like I go mountain biking and walking and whatnot. I always have been really fond of the country, but the other guys are really like sort of. Once you've heard the birds tweeting, I mean, what else is there to do? Sort of thing, you know, and despite the fact that I actually liked the location, because as I say, I'm a country person.
Yeah,
Apart from that, the actual experience of recording and the location, it lacks in that situation. It's all right if you're sort of, I don't know, you're the sort of band who likes to spend a lot of time in contemplation about what you're doing, like for instance, I don't know, Pink Floyd or somebody like that, where you're taking your time and it's all going to flow and all that stuff, which is perfectly reasonable way to approach it. But our approach was always a lot more intense. I mean, our music was intense and our personalities were intense, and we wanted to deliver that in the record. Lion's Mouth at Rockfield really doesn't have, it had that all washed out of it, really. I think. Although, as I say, you know, it's an excellent production. It sounds great on the hi-fi and all that. So
yeah. Well, I can relate to like the other guys where you said that after you've heard the birds singing, then that's it. Because I'm more really the city.
now what?
Because my sister used to live in North Wales when she was still alive. It was sort of like whenever we go, whenever we used to go there, and then it was all like stay the night. I'll just say, can we just go back to Manchester?
Okay. Yeah, no, I get that. But I mean, as I say, I mean, I've visited Wales in subsequent years, largely to go mountain biking, and I really like the place because as I say, I like the outdoors and I like the countryside and I like all the peace and quiet and all the, sunshine and trees and flowers and whatnot. But I mean, especially when you're the sound recording an album, you want to keep a grip on the urgency of it, and being in the countryside being catered to in a nice little holiday cottage for a week doesn't lend itself to that at all, really.
So when you left the band, it was 1987, 88.
Yeah.
So they totally just sort like they didn't carry on when you left.
No.
They just
I hear that they did interview a couple of other drummers to try and fill the gap, but it didn't really work out. And then they just split up.
But what did you do after that? After you left the band?
Well, I went out and got what my mother would have called a proper job, and sort of been doing that ever since. So after the band split up, I just sort of went to work really because I thought it'd be a good idea to get a paycheck and be able to buy things for a change.
So you didn't join? You didn't join any other bands? Or?
No, well, I went to a couple of auditions for other people, and two of the other, I think 3 bands I auditioned. Well, 2 of them wanted me to join, but I didn't really. It felt a bit like as a drummer in the sound, you've been spending your time, helping Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And then that all comes to an end, and you get some people come along who want you to paint to wallpaper their front room. It's not. It's so far off what I was doing before that I just thought, no, there's no point in this, because it would just be like going through the motions for the sake of wanting to play in a band. So I didn't. I mean, there was talk at the time of me joining the Pretenders. I was getting an offer of an audition over that way. I think Blair Cunningham had just left, their second drummer. And they were searching around before Martin got back in the band. They were looking for something else. And there was some talk of me getting an audition there. But I think She Who Must Be Obeyed knew about me and the reputation of the band I was in, and it never happened. I think it was a good thing, really, because I don't think we'd have got on, really. Somehow.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But look, a few years ago, you started another band, which is like, I don't want to really say tribute band, because you're an original member, you're a founding member, so you can't really sort of like say it's like XTC, which is now with the E, like instead of just XTC, it's like EXTC. Terry Chambers, which is like an original member, played that. So it's not really like a tribute band. So a few years ago, you started your own, which is it's called Into the Sound, which is number 2 in, and then number 2 the sound. So
Yeah.
how did that come about? How did that happen?
Well, I'd left the music scene completely when I got the job after the band, and then I was there for 20 years, and then I got another regular job. So, and up until the point of retirement, so I was sort of away from that for about 30 years. I was just in normal life, just having a job and kind of living day to day like everybody does, really.
Yeah.
And then I'd long since stopped even drumming. I'd just lost interest in it completely. And then the film happened, and because I got my slot in that, where I was sort of did the interview bit, talking about the band and so on. And I went along to the premiere in Amsterdam, and a short while after, and I'd moved to Spain by that point. And I heard somebody told me that Carlo was now going along to where the film was being shown and singing a few sort of sound songs and songs by Adrian with just himself and his acoustic guitar before the film would come on. And so I sort of sent him a little jokey email, and this would be in 2017. I just said, well, hello, Carlo, it's Mike. Remember me? Do you fancy having a drummer then? Ha, 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 ha. And just as a joke, really.
Yeah.
And I almost immediately got an email back saying, yeah, great, let's do it. So after a 30-year gap, I had to get hold of a drum kit and, spent the winter of 2017, 2018 practicing. Fortunately, once you've been drumming for a long while, it's a bit like riding a bike. You can always get back on again.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah. So after a 30-year gap, I felt like, well, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted 30 years ago, it's this. So, and the other guys in the band are sort of what Carlo had already played with, because he has a couple of other bands running, one of which is called The Convent. And the other guys who are involved were already in his other band. So it's but we don't regard ourselves as a tribute band at all. We regard ourselves more as a legacy holding band. Because, as I say, I'm there and Carlo's there. And in fact, the rest of the guys in the band have all, to some larger or smaller degree, actually been involved with performing with Adrian before. So, we're not just a bunch of guys who like songs by the sound. We are actually quite closely connected.
Yeah. And so did you go on tour? And are you still together, or what's happening?
Well, as I say, once COVID came along and sort of destroyed everything for everybody, it's dropped off. I mean, we did a gig in it was November last year. Was the last time we played together up in Holland. And everybody's been a bit distracted since. I mean, it was never our intention to be a proper touring band. We do 4 or 5 gigs a year here and there, as and when we were offered or if people were interested.
Yeah.
Some of them headlining, some of them part of a larger sort of festival.
Festival, yeah.
Just here and there, because I mean, to be quite honest, I don't think I could tour anymore. It'd kill me. I'm not quite. I haven't yet invested in the Zimmer frame, but I'm not young anymore. So I've learned to pace myself. But we are working now on drawing up some more plans for what we're going to do next year. So there's still life in the old dog yet.
Oh, hopefully you'll do a UK gig. And then,
well, that's always been a problem. I mean, I did a gig in the UK recently with a bunch of guys, some of whom I know, where we did a sort of a tribute gig to Adrian at a pub in South London where he used to go of a weekend drinking.
Is that with Elliot?
And that was we called ourselves the Unsound just for a one-off gig.
Yeah.
But that was largely because it was all about, I mean, the landlord of the pub knew Adrian and the band, and, a lot of the people that were involved were friends of his and so on. But with regard to Into the Sound, getting into the UK, it's never happened because the interest simply isn't there.
Oh, so more so like the fans are more in Europe than.
Always were. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the Unsound because I saw it on your Facebook page.
Yes.
It's got David Dudley because.
David, yeah.
Yeah, because David Dudley actually got in touch when I had Fliss Kitson, the drummer of the Nightingales, on last week. So that's how I found out about because he mentioned you as well, and I was like, oh, funnily enough, he's going to be my guest next week. And then I saw this photograph of the Unsound, and it's got David Dudley on that one. So that was just a one-off. It's not. It's a shame.
I wouldn't be averse to going and doing more UK gigs as the Unsound, even if we can't get into the Sound over there. But as I say, there really just isn't the interest. I mean, there wasn't really that much interest after Lion's Mouth, and we got kicked out by Warner Brothers in England for the band anyway. I mean, the most that could be said that we did were a few gigs at the Marquee in Wardour Street in London, really. All the major stuff that we did was all over the English Channel in Europe, Holland, Germany, a few gigs in France, Holland, like that, really.
And apparently you've got another band which is in Australia or New Zealand.
Oh yeah, well that was an interesting thing because that was simply because a friend of mine who was the bass player in the Pretenders and then Simple Minds, Malcolm Foster. I've known him from way back. I played with him a few times in just doing sort of pub gigs for fun, with other friends, with playing songs that you liked, sort of thing. Sunday lunchtime down the pub. When he left Simple Minds, he and his wife moved to New Zealand because she was from New Zealand, to settle down there and start a family and have a life for themselves. So I'd always been in touch with him. And it just so happened that I was able to afford to fly down there for the second time round, really, just to go and keep in touch and say hello and have a holiday. That was the intention. But then I mentioned to him, well, why don't it'd be good to come down and coincide with coming and watching your band out there play, because he had a local thing going. And he said, well, we're not doing anything, but why don't we do a gig? I said, well, okay, what are we going to do? So he said, well, I know this guy who's a guitarist and singer and knows a keyboard player. Why don't we have a rehearsal and just do a gig as a sort of Sound tribute band? So the other two guys came along with Malcolm, and because we all know this. Well, Malcolm not so much, but the other guys were fans of the band. They all knew the songs anyway. So whilst I was en route, as it were, Malcolm was just rehearsing the set lists along to the records, and then we did the afternoon's rehearsal. went through the set, and then just sort of hired a club and went and did a gig just for fun, really. And that was The Sound Revisited. And there's a few
Oh wow.
YouTube things up there about that. And I was sort of struck by the sort of the circularity of it. That although I played with Malcolm before years ago, here we were again, not just playing with him and the other guys, but actually doing what I used to do in The Sound. And
Yeah.
it was a great gig. I mean, it was very small because it was in the off season in New Zealand and everybody was out of town. It was the summer. The colleges were closed and it's like not normally the thing that happens. And it was really a tiny little club in Auckland with on a stage in the corner sort of thing with
Yeah.
about 60 people there. But everybody enjoyed themselves tremendously. It went down really well. So glad to do it, really.
Well, may hopefully the next time you sort of like go to New Zealand and have this band again, because the Philippines is very close to the
Ah,
if you can sort of like do
ah,
a gig in the Philippines, as long as you play Total
yeah.
Recall, then that would be really amazing for the Filipino fans. So,
Well,
like,
I'm sure. I'm sure that if a promoter in the Philippines was interested, they could get in touch and we could sort something out. Maybe you never know.
yeah, just want to say hello to Alvin of the Muted Skulls. He said hello, Mike. He's there also in the Philippines. Yeah, he's in a
Okay.
band called the Muted Skulls. I don't know if they actually sort of like do a cover of Total Recall. Maybe maybe they do. I'm not sure. But so now that you're back playing the drums, because after 30 years, you just sort of like totally ignored it, and but you
Mm.
came back and now playing it. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so how does it feel?
Well, I mean, technically, and in terms of timekeeping and um, my skills base and so on, I actually consider I'm a much better drummer these days than I was with The Sound. I think that's largely because um, I can be a lot freer about it, more of a free agent these days in the way that I play, whereas before it was very much slotting into what the other guys were doing, and it was kind of
Yeah,
we've all got to like it to do it like that sort of thing. Whereas these days, I kind of more or less like when I go out with Into the Sound, um, even though they're the same songs, I never play it the same way twice. It's always slightly different. It depends on how I feel on the night. But because it's the song, everybody's able to follow me. My approach is a bit more like my original sort of drum hero, Charlie, in the Stones. If you listen to any of their or look at any of their live stuff, and you look from song to song across the different performances, you'll notice that it's not the same every evening. And I think that that's my way of keeping it feeling fresh for me. Otherwise, it
yeah,
becomes sort of like, a production line where you're just doing the same thing all the time.
yeah. Just going through the motions of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll try little bits and pieces that are different, little tricks of this and that here and there. And I think technically these days I actually am a better drummer than I used to be with The Sound. So
Well, it's good that you're actually back drumming, because it would be a shame if we just sort of like totally stop. So,
I
but
think I've set myself I've set myself a target of when I'm 75, I'll pause and have a think about it. Uh, and so I mean, if I can keep going past that, then it's just gravy, isn't it? Really,
yeah, yeah. Well, you've already actually answered my next question, which is drumming heroes. You said Charlie Watts, and
Charlie.
have
Yeah,
you have you got any others? So like apart from
yeah. I mean, I don't. What's going on these days? I don't really know because I've got to the point now in life where I don't really pay much attention to news stuff. I think that's just the human condition, really. But I mean, the sort of drummers that I was listening to that I admire after Charlie, I was listening to Ginger Baker a lot when he came up with Cream back in the
yeah,
60s.
yeah.
John Bonham with Led Zeppelin, tremendous drummer. In fact, I've just managed at this late date to master the John Bonham triplet. Finally, I can do it. Which I'm quite pleased about. John Bonham, Billy Cobham, I like a lot. I went to see him last year in Madrid, playing with the band that he had at that point. I've seen him 3 times now, and I would say that he is my absolute favourite drummer to listen to. Billy, I've even got a CD signed by him. I went to see him at Ronnie Scott's some years ago in
Oh, wow,
London.
Yeah.
where I don't know if you've ever been to Ronnie Scott. Ronnie Scott's is a little jazz club up in Soho. There was no room for anybody other than Billy Cobham and his kit on the stage.
Oh.
You know, but to sit, and I had a ringside seat. I sat about, about 15 feet away from Billy Cobham playing the drums. That was a blast. And some modern drummers. I pay a lot of attention to jazz drummers because I'm listening to I'm stunned by the technique. Anybody from current players, like there's a guy called Antonio Sanchez out of New York, who's very, very good. Also, there's a guy called Ndugu Chanclair who plays with Stanley Clarke that I like. And I listened because I'm just stunned by the technique. I mean, the thing I like about a lot of jazz drummers is the way that they can play things that require a lot of expertise, but there's a lot of it's the deft touch. Because I'm the sort of drummer who I'm a rock drummer, really. I've got a lot of unresolved issues, and I take it out on the kit. There's a lot of aggression there. But the other night I was listening to a really old recording of Louis Bellson, who's a jazz player from the 50s, playing brushes on a kit with a piano player and a double bass player, and it's fascinating. It really grips your attention because it's done with such a light touch, and that's the sort of thing that really gets me, rather than listening to other people like me who just spend their time battering the hell out of stuff.
Yeah, because I've watched a film about drummers and drumming, and I realize now that jazz drummers are actually completely different from rock drummers.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah. And I've always tried. I like the way I always try when I'm playing is to be in the song. I mean, a lot of rock drummers are there to kind of lay down the foundation that everybody else plays on top of, so to speak.
Yeah.
But a jazz player will always be there in the mix with the other instrumentalists, as it were. And I've always tried to, even though, as I say, I'm kind of like a rock drummer. I try to play like that rather than just providing a platform.
Yeah. Well, Aidan O'Rourke, he's my support tech, or my husband. He said that he loves the song Total Recall and the drumming is great. Yeah,
thank you.
I made him listen to that one because
you made him listen to it.
I don't think he knew about Total Recall before in the 80s or something. But the next question I'm going to ask you is and this is something that I found out on the internet as well. Apparently, I was going to ask you about drumming disaster. But I found out that you broke your hand before a gig in Italy. Well, will you consider that as one of your drumming disasters? And how did that happen?
That was a disaster of the ego, really. At the time, I was sort of involved in martial arts, and it was fairly early on. And I allowed my sort of self-image to advance way beyond my capability when I'd taken up this particular branch that I was going on to classes for. And the rest of the band just thought I was talking bollocks, basically. And we were in the van we were in Italy, part of a European tour. And our road manager at the time, Stevens, said that we were talking, okay, so you know about all this kung fu then. Well, why don't you demonstrate how good you are at it? So he said, all right. I said, I'll put your arm out. He put his arm out, and I attempted a kung fu chop, which went disastrously wrong, and I star fractured the bone on the end of my hand.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's not a terrific. It doesn't, it's not a great story. But I had to go to hospital and get it all put into plaster in the middle of a tour, and we couldn't cancel the gig that we were going to do because the promoter essentially I mean, I don't know if it's still the case, but I did hear that that particular club was under the management of, how shall we put it, not totally legit people.
Oh, okay.
And the promoter was panicking because, of course, part of the money he would make from the gig would be his tithe to the people who were actually in control.
Yeah.
And if that wasn't forthcoming, he could suffer some sort of unfortunate accident. So we agreed to go and do the gig. And I did the gig with my right arm in plaster, just playing with the bass drums, snare with a foot on a hi-hat. And it's sounding more like a drum machine, so that's all I could use. But bizarrely enough, we went down really well. But after that, we cancelled the rest of the tour and came home. And we were due to support U2 at a gig in London, quite a prestigious. Yeah, quite a prestigious gig at what was then a theatre called the Lyceum in the Strand, uptown there. These rock gigs on, and we were going to support them, which was seen to be, a big leg up at the time. And I suggested to the rest of the band that, well, why don't they get a substitute drummer just for that gig to keep it going? And I suggested a guy who was then drumming with the band that we knew called Cardiacs. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
Well, anyway, so I suggested this guy. We knew them and they knew us. And I said, well, we'll just rehearse him for the gig. He's only got to learn a certain amount of numbers and go and do a gig supporting U2. And then, when my hands healed up. But they wouldn't hear of it. They just couldn't face the idea of doing it with a pickup drummer. So it all sort of went off from there, really. All due to me thinking that, I'm the next Bruce Lee. And I... it's just terrible, man. What a thing to do.
But did you go to the gig? But did you go to the gig and see Bono and U2?
No, I can't stand them. They're horrible. I'd no more go and see Bono singing than I would go and see some politician preaching. It's about the same level for me, really, to be honest. And I don't care who knows it. I care not.
Well, Bono's actually going to do a solo tour.
Is he?
Yeah. Okay. He's going to be doing some singing and storytelling.
Oh, okay, so the rest of the band have finally seen the light then. Ask him. Well, if you come across him, ask him if he wants a drummer. I'll go along. Yeah, I'll go along and fuck it up for him.
I wanted to go and see him, but the tickets are just so expensive. It's just ridiculously expensive. So I thought, I'll just leave it at that. So it's just a shame. So that wasn't a disaster. Not meeting Bono and U2 wasn't a disaster for you.
No, he didn't leave a big hole in my life that I weep over constantly.
So what would be your this is going to be my last question now, because I know it's but what would be your advice to drummers out there if you just drummers are just starting out?
Well, that's a similar question I've been asked before, and I always like to quote back in the 80s when Britpop was going on, and it was there was this thing about, do you like Oasis or do you like Blur? There was this kind of thing going on. And I remember listening to an interview with Keith Richards from the Stones on the radio once, where somebody said to him, well, what advice would you give, Keith, for a young person starting out in rock music these days? And he said, well, basically just keep bashing away and sooner or later Bob's your uncle.
Well, that is cool. Well, I've got to ask you then, Oasis or Blur?
Neither, really. No. Oh, Blur are quite clever. Well, as I say, there's a couple of things Blur have done that I thought were quite had tongue-in-cheek kind of irony to them. But Oasis, no, not really.
No. But who do you
So,
listen?
but that's okay. I mean, everybody likes different things. Who's
Yeah.
to say? Whatever, really. I'm not gonna sort of try and ruin other people's gigs. So that I'm sure they've got people who like them, and they're much more successful than I've ever been. So good luck to them. I just don't
Yeah.
like much
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. But who do you like? Who? Any current band that you will sort of like recommend to all of you?
Current bands? No, not really. To be honest, I sort of left one after the sort of the new wave thing. Kind of the way music's developed since, and I've sort of gone off in a completely different direction to the stuff I listen to. Like I listen to jazzers, I quite like a lot of classical music, a lot of folk music, bits and
Yeah.
pieces from here, there, and everywhere. Who's current these days on the rock scene? I've no idea. I don't really sort of pay much attention to it.
Well,
But,
yeah.
it's just the way my attention has gone, really.
Yeah. Where you
So
are living.
if you can recommend some, I'll give them a listen. Send me a message. Send me a message. Let me know who I should be. Who should I be listening to these days? Let me
You
know,
should
and I'll.
listen. You should listen to the album of the year, Michael Head and the Red Elastic Bands, Dear Scott. That's what
Okay.
because I mean, although he's not really so like a new one, because he was in the Pale Fountains in the 80s and
Ah.
Shack
Okay.
in the 90s and stuff.
Okay.
But it's for me,
No,
it's like album
I'm
of the year.
serious. I'm serious. Send me a message on the old Facebook Messenger. Tell me who
Yeah.
you think I should listen to, and then I'll go and listen to them.
Oh, brilliant!
Yeah.
There's actually quite a lot. Because
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, where you are living it right now. Do
Yeah.
you go to a lot of gigs or?
No, no. Where I am, I'm somewhere very, very rural in a very small town up in the mountains. And all you get around here is like the occasional flamenco guitarist act sort of thing. I mean, there's a couple of little local bands who play pop covers and the like, but I mean, we're really, really remote. If I was like, for instance, as I say, last year I went to see Billy Cobham's band. I had to travel all the way to Madrid to do it. This is really off grid out here where I am, so not a lot
Yeah.
happens.
And do you get recognized there?
No.
No.
I mean, there are some people around who acquaintances and friends who know who I am, but I don't get fan worshipped or anything like that. I mean, why would I? I'm just a drummer.
No, we're not just a drummer. I mean, drummers are amazing. They're the coolest members
Okay. Well, you could quote Stuart Copeland: "Any band is only as good as its drummer."
Oh, that's Bobby Gillespie who said that.
Yeah.
But apparently, I
True.
found out. Yeah, I found out that it was actually originated from Joe Strummer of the
Oh,
Clash.
okay, really? Huh. Okay.
Yeah, and
But it's
so
true, though. If the drummer's no good, the rest of it's not worth listening to.
it's a drummer that sort of like keeps the band together, isn't it? It's always,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Muchas gracias, I should say, because I really enjoyed chatting to you, and hope someday you'll be back in the UK, and then you're gonna do a gig with Dion Sound, and hopefully I'll be there to see you. And
you never know. You never know. If you're there, please come along and say hello.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. All right. Well, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the weekend, the Sunday. It's like, I'm sure it's a lovely day there in Spain. So.
Yes.
Okay. Bye now. Bye.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, that was so lovely. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this week. I really enjoyed it. Oh, I'm so sorry, Rob. Hello, Rob. Yeah. And Monty as well. Monty's in Spain. I'm so sorry. He's gone now. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the first so like the start of the show, Monty, but this episode is dedicated to you. This is what I call my It's All About New Wave episode of Ask the Drummer. Thank you so much for the link up with Mike Dudley. But anyways, yeah, well, that's all we've got for this week. And thank you again. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Please do keep an eye out for next week's guest announcement post. It's going to be another amazing drama that we're going to have next week. And like I always say, love music, love life, and love drummers because they're just so amazing. You've seen Mike Dudley; he's such a lovely, lovely guy. So thank you all so much. Bye for now. Bye. Bye.